I gave Ronnie a call. I said, hey, you got to check out my plane. So they sent, the U.S. Embassy sent like a special team with dogs to check out the plane to see if there are any bombs on board. We got the screenplay to Sylvester Stallone, who happened to be looking for a co-writer for Rambo 3. So I ended up meeting Stallone. We hit it off, and I co-wrote Rambo 3 with him, the one where he goes to Afghanistan. And so that was another step in my evolution. Firebase is the script, and then I made a movie a few years later, a little 16mm movie called Firefight. Okay, so they're two separate projects.
So Firebase was your calling card, you would say, that got you in the room?
It pretty much was. And there's some misinformation out there about me that Bloodsport was what really made my career take off. Mm-hmm. And that's not true, because I was hired to write Rambo 3 before I got involved with Bloodsport. And Rambo 3 is what really elevated me, which really got me a lot of buzz in the business, rather than Bloodsport. Because Bloodsport, while it's popular with fans of martial arts movies, I'm sure you're a fan of Bloodsport also.
Yeah, I got the poster in the back.
But Bloodsport didn't do jack for me as far as pushing my career, because nobody in the industry really cared about Bloodsport. It was this low-budget movie starring this guy, Jean-Claude Van Damme, who nobody in the industry had ever heard of before. And it did well eventually, but not nearly as well as Rambo 3. That's the movie that really propelled me into a different level of screenwriting.
Okay, so let's touch on that then. So, like, Firebase got you in the door, right?
Correct. Yes.
It got you picked up to write Rambo 3. I'm a big Sly fan. I love Rocky.
Me
big
too.
Part of my childhood as well. What was he like working with? What was the experience?
Well, he and I, we hit it off. We just hit it off. We got along really great, and it's not like we were sitting in a room together writing or anything like that. Basically, I'd meet up with them. And funny thing is, I just would have felt like such a geek fanboy if I would have said, "Hey, Sly, can I take a picture with you?" So I never had any photos taken with me and Stallone, which is kind of unusual. So I don't have that in my book. I have a lot of photos with me and Van Damme and Dolph Lundgren and Mark Dacascos and all these other people. But I never actually I never said, hey, Sly, would you mind taking a picture with me? And we didn't have cell phones back then. So I couldn't do a selfie. I couldn't say, hey, Sly, let's you and me take a selfie. Okay.
Trying to do like a Polaroid.
I had a 35mm camera, but I would have had to set it up on a tripod and do a self timer and all that kind of stuff, because you didn't take selfies with a 35mm single lens reflex.
We got to get you a selfie with Stallone now.
Huh? What's that?
Do you have any selfies with Stallone now? We got to get you one, man.
No, I never took a selfie with Sly. So, plenty of them with Van Damme and everybody else, but with Stallone, I never did. But we would get together at his office, and sometimes one time I met him in New York City. He had been traveling he went to Denmark to visit Brigitte Nielsen's relatives. And he had kind of a bad experience there, because there was a lot of anti-U.S., and especially, anti-Ronald Reagan and anti-Sylvester Stallone, anti-Rambo. There was a lot of negative vibes towards these patriotic American films like the Rambo films. And there was a huge demonstration in Denmark at the airport. There were really hundreds of people demonstrating against Stallone, and somebody had actually spray painted a death threat on his plane. He had a private plane that he flew over there, and somebody got close enough to spray paint a threat on there. Which
why?
Huh?
Why?
Yeah. So Well, I guess I have to take you back to the 1980s when Ronald
Oh,
Reagan was the president,
okay.
and Rambo was a really popular film. And this was viewed by, especially by, oh, there's a lot of leftists in Europe. And so Stallone became like their number one target. The number one hate target was Stallone because he represented America. He represented macho America. He was a good friend of Ronald Reagan, who was the president at the time.
Mhm.
So this led to a lot of anger and negativity towards Stallone. Just like, well, today we're seeing the same thing. The people are demonstrating against Israel. You know,
Mhm.
Israel is a friendly country to the U.S. and it still is, but a lot of, especially people on the extreme left, are very negative about it. And these same people were negative about Sylvester Stallone at the time. So there were hundreds of them gathered outside his hotel room. He looks out his hotel room, and there's a few hundred people out there all demonstrating against Rambo, who's basically this symbol of macho America.
Mhm.
And then they spray painted on his jet. So this flipped him out. He didn't know Reagan at the time. He actually called Reagan on the phone. We called Ronnie. So I gave Ronnie a call. I said, "Hey, you got to check out my plane." So they sent the U.S. Embassy sent like a special team with dogs to check out the plane to see if there are any bombs on board. They didn't
Mhm.
find any. Okay, Sly, it's safe for you to fly back to America. And he immediately flew back because I wasn't scheduled to meet with him in New York.
Mhm.
I had been meeting with him in Los Angeles. He had a house in Malibu, and we would meet there. But suddenly I get a phone call from his secretary saying, "Hey, Sly wants to meet you in New York City." Okay, so they sent me a plane ticket, set me up in a hotel, a really nice hotel that he was staying at,
Mhm.
and we met in New York and discussed various aspects of the story then. So that was my basic relationship with him. We would get together once in a while and talk about the story. And
Okay.
the very first time I met him face to face, um, my agent, and I wasn't going in there to talk about Rambo 3. Ostensibly, I was going in there to talk about some other projects because he had read Firebase. He actually wanted to make Firebase as a movie,
Mhm.
as he told me so a number of times. Never got around to doing it, but he liked the script that much. And I had come up with an idea for a French Foreign Legion movie at the time.
Okay.
And there was an article in the magazine back then called M Magazine, and there was the cover photo was a French Foreign Legionnaire with the beret and everything, and that's what kind of got me hooked on the French Foreign Legion, was reading this article, and led to me having an idea about a French Foreign Legion movie.
Mhm.
So my agent actually pitched that to Sly because they wanted me to come in not to talk about Rambo 3. That was that was the bonus secret that they were going to spring on me.
Mhm.
But they wanted to talk to me about the French Foreign Legion movie. And when I went in, I had that copy of M Magazine with me, and I showed it to his development executive. And she says, "Okay, wait, hold on just a second. I'll be right back." She goes in the back room. She comes out. She's got the exact same magazine. Sly had read the same magazine, and he had the same idea. Let's do a French Foreign Legion movie. So Sly and I met about that. That's how we got started. Really, it wasn't really about Rambo 3. At first, it was just French Foreign Legion, and
Okay.
it just gave him an opportunity to sit down and talk to me and see how he see if we meshed in any way.
Yeah.
Apparently we did because I happened to have the exact same idea that he had. It wasn't the exact same idea because my idea was different. My idea was to have it take place in the 1920s, like in the classic French Foreign Legion era, the
Okay.
like Beaugest era, with the fort in the middle of the desert and getting attacked by various tribes of Arabs, and uh, he had an idea which was different. He wanted to do French Foreign Legion, but he wanted it to be contemporary. And I personally thought that and actually Jerry Bruckheimer had already made a French Foreign Legion movie like that took place in the 20s. It was called March or Die. And it's a really good movie. I don't know if you ever heard of it.
Yeah, another one to look at, man. March or Die.
March or Die. It's really worth looking at. We decided let's do a contemporary one because that's what Sly wanted to do. He didn't want to do the historical one. Mm-hmm. So I ended up writing that for him. I wrote this French Foreign Legion screenplay. But at the same time, they started talking to me about a Rambo sequel. Mm-hmm. And I had pretty much the same idea that Sly had, which was have it take place in Afghanistan. Because the situation in Afghanistan was very similar to what they had in the previous Rambo film, which I would call Rambo 2, the one that took place in Vietnam, where he goes back to rescue POWs.
Mm-hmm, yeah.
What we had in common was the bad guys were Russians, okay? They were the Soviets. And in Afghanistan, it was the same bad guys. It's the Soviets. And we've got at the time, the CIA was secretly supplying the Afghan rebels, the Mujahideen, with Stinger missiles so they could shoot down helicopters and jets. So my idea was that Rambo goes over there. He's basically hired by the CIA this time. And they wanted to go over there and link up with the rebels and help them get these Stinger missiles. But the way that we developed the story, and this was mostly my idea, he just figured Troutman's the one who's contacted by the CIA. He goes to Rambo, says, hey, they're sending me over to Afghanistan to expedite getting Stinger missiles to the Afghan rebels. And I want you to go with me, Johnny. I need somebody to back me up. Mm-hmm. And Stallone's feeling was that Rambo would just say, well, let me just go get my gear and I'm there with you, okay? But now, being an actual Vietnam veteran and knowing a lot of Vietnam veterans, I felt that that's not how it would work. I felt like Rambo he's been through the ringer already. He's been to war, he's killed people, he's come close to being killed himself. He wants no part of this anymore. He's the baddest badass in the world, but he doesn't want to fight. You've got to push Rambo to get him to fight. He's not somebody who gets off on violence. In fact, he's trying to be non-violent at the time. He's like, we put him in this Buddhist monastery in Thailand, basically showing that he's trying to get away from war and from warfare. And so I told Sly, I don't think Rambo would be so eager to go to Afghanistan, even to back up his friend Troutman. He would say, sorry, Sam, I've fought my wars. I'm through with this, and good luck to you, but I can't go with you. I just can't do this anymore. So what ends up happening, as you know in the movie, Troutman goes over there on his own, and he's captured by the Russians. And so now Rambo is feeling some pangs of guilt because his friend came to him, wanted some help. Rambo refused, and now because of that, Troutman's being held prisoner in some Soviet prison in Afghanistan. So now he's motivated. Okay, it's not about him. It's not about wanting to kill people. He's not eager to get into a war situation again. But now he's going over there to rescue his friend. So that became the basis of Rambo 3. And that's something that Sly and I worked out together. Like I said, I'm the one who said Rambo wouldn't go. Even though he's the perfect guy to accompany Troutman, he wouldn't do it just because he's had enough of this. And so it becomes a rescue mission. And I believe even on the poster, they said the first one was for himself, the second one was for his country, and the third one is for his friend. It's basically all about going to Afghanistan to rescue his friend and his mentor, who is this guy, Colonel Troutman. Um, so that's pretty much how that story came about. And then we would go back and forth. I'd do some writing, then he would do some writing over mine, and that's basically how the collaboration worked. Is that we would take turns rewriting one another's material.
Nice. Which that whole debate thing I think works well in story, right? Because there's always that debate. What is it like? Is it like 12 pages in?
Conflict, huh?
Yeah, conflict. Yeah, where is this internal conflict of trying to, I'm not supposed to do this, and then finally it sends him on his, I guess, hero's journey or whatever.
Right. Well, this
Yeah.
is like an external conflict because Troutman comes to him, says, "Hey, Johnny, I need your help in Afghanistan," and Rambo says, "No, sorry, I can't do it. The only reason I can't do it is because I've done too much of this. I can't do anymore, and so I'm sorry, I'm not going to accompany you." Then his friend gets captured, and now he's feeling guilt. He's feeling obligated to go and rescue his friend, and he knows nobody else can do it because it's not like the U.S. is going to send troops over there to rescue him. It's got to be this. It's through his contact in the CIA. He has to go over there himself and effect the rescue on his own. And that's basically how the story worked out.
That's cool, man. That's awesome. So you're working with Sly on Rambo, right?
Right.
Rambo 3. Were you working on Rambo 3 and developing that story as maybe Bloodsport, or what were projects that at that time that you were working on that led you into this, I don't want to say steamroll, but of where you had this nice run of movies?
It's all in this book. Okay.
I'm gonna read it now.
Yeah, you can get it. It's available on Amazon. So
if you're watching right now, everybody out there, go get the book, take a look at it.
Go get the book. It's on Amazon. Actually, you can get it at Barnes and Noble and Walmart and lots of places.